to Soul Sessions. So this is our first podcast, and we are being graciously hosted by Christina,
Hello?
Phoenix Healing by Sea. So we're gonna talk about the soul, like what the soul is, and the elements that make up the soul, and how we can have real life application into our lives to make help us to grow into that Christ-like character, which is really what helps us elevate everything in our being. So the first element of the soul is the nucleus, which is 0 point. So this is like this is our extension of our source of being. It is a piece of God that has been installed in all of us. Is the core of our soul, of our entire being. So that is, and we call this absolute truth. So if God is the absolute truth, our source of being is our absolute truth. We have a piece of that inside of each of us. And it's up to each individual soul to uh, build on all of those elements to be able to live in a universal law as best as possible, to flow in that natural law, the universal law. So, and to me, universal law is harmony. That's how I like to uh, look at it personally. But go ahead, Christina. I see you have a question
She's like, I know you want to
or
talk.
comment.
So, would you say that universal laws and karmic laws are the same?
Yeah, it's the balance and everything. It's the fairness. It's the karma.
Okay.
It is the harmony. It harmonizes everything. As I explained to my 6-year-old, it's like the force. So if we look back at Star Wars, it's like the force is that holds everything, that balances everything.
Right.
Um, and there are other names for this as well, but we won't get too confusing right off the bat. So, um,
Maybe a little bit later.
yeah, definitely. So the first element is the nucleus of the soul is absolute truth. This is our extension of our source of being. This is a part of the divine that is in all of us. After that, the first element that makes a soul is honesty. And honesty generates, these are the first 8 generators of the soul. So honesty generates acceptance. So, like on a personal level, if I'm honest with myself, then other people are, I'm able to accept myself for who I am.
Right.
If I'm honest with the way I look or the way I act or the way I eat or whatever it is, as long as I'm honest with myself and everything, I can accept myself and love me for who I am. And then that's the foundation for everything. It's the foundation for every single relationship we have, whether it's business or personal or anything. Honesty is that first foundation point of our souls that we have to stay true to because that's who we are. um,
Right. So the basis of it being unconditional love also.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I said so the basis of it being kind of going towards the level of unconditional love also.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I
Kind
guess
of.
everything's kind of founded on that as a whole. I mean, everything in this, every element to me in the soul is related to that unconditional love. I mean, if you think of soul, if you look at it as an acronym, a soul is the source of unconditional love.
I was right. I was right. I like being right.
Yeah. So, and this is so important. I mean, like, I mean, we've all had these experiences where we haven't been honest with ourselves or others, and others haven't been honest with us. So, if we can't be honest, we can't accept who that person is or what they're telling us because, you know, we're not
Exactly.
sure.
And the
We're not
energy
sure if
comes
our soul
forward
can
too.
accept it.
Right.
So, and our soul attracts elements. So that nucleus of absolute truth attracts all these elements to ourselves through the whole soul travel. So when we leave our source of being and we're born into the cosmos and we hit the friction and we're going through to find our parents kind of situation, who's gonna let me have a portal into this earthly world, you know?
Right.
Um along the way we're picking up all these other elements. So these are elements from our source of being, our divine elements. So honesty generates acceptance is number one. The second one is patience generates tolerance. If we don't have patience or we can't tolerate something long enough, we can, act impulsively or in a way that may harm people around us, including ourselves. So that is, people say patience is a virtue, but
I was
we'll
just
get
about to ask that. Would
we'll get to
you?
virtue. Yeah, we'll
Okay,
get to
good.
virtue later.
I'm having a debate
Virtue
with
is
somebody about that.
virtue is actually the nucleus of the ego. So I don't know how they played with words on that one, but if we have patience, we are activating tolerance for certain things. And that's another thing, real life application, every situation we're in, we have to have patience with our children. We have to have patience with our elderly parents and, family members, whatever, people we work with, whatever the situation is. The more patience we have, we're able to tolerate more and we're more in control of ourselves when we really slow down and have that um, patience and tolerance.
Right.
Any other questions yet?
Well, me and Patience haven't really gotten along for the last 40 years. I mean, it's improved in the last 3. It really has. Like
Hey,
prior,
that's a
I will say
ongoing.
prior to my awakening back in March of 2020, yeah, but
We've
I
all
have.
struggled with it.
That's why I say, like, that's why I'm not so sure that it is a virtue. It may start out that way, but because of the struggles and the trials and tribulations that you go through, I mean, maybe it has the ability to be a virtue, but it doesn't appear that way.
Well,
Once you're 40 years in, right? Or am I wrong?
well, it's one of those things that as we get older, we learn to have more patience because
Right.
because of our actions in the past or how we may have acted impulsively about something or hurt somebody in the process because we were too quick to react somehow. Um,
Right.
I mean, I can tell you from having 3 different children in 2 different ends of my life. My younger children or my older children, I didn't have as much patience with them.
Right.
But, having a child a little bit later in life, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna enjoy these moments a little bit more in detail because I know how fast they go, and I can have more tolerance for, temper tantrums and things like that." Although they still get me sometimes, just being honest.
We're
But,
sad.
those are just normal everyday life things, and it's up to each individual unique person soul to be
Right.
able to take charge of their own life and their own emotions and everything, because I mean we can only control 100% of ourselves and 0% of our environment.
Exactly.
And right now, I mean, a topic we talked about yesterday was stress. People say, "Oh, I'm stressed out." Well, actually, stress is outside of you. But if you let it into you, it becomes irritation, it becomes frustration. And when that stress comes in and causes those issues, then we have more of explosive situations internally, which can go external. So, um,
Explosive.
but recognizing that anything outside of us, we don't have any control over, but we can control ourselves, which can have huge impact on our outside
Right.
stresses.
Well, and that's just like, as long as you can try to in some way, shape, form, manner, what have you, um, look more towards the positive on the inside, it will reflect into your outside world. But if you don't change within here first, good luck with the outside. Because like you said,
Exactly.
starts here first.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, everything. I mean, you hear people all over Twitter these days. Oh, you have everything inside. Some people argue that point, but I mean, if we literally have a piece of our source of being as our nucleus of our soul, I would say that's pretty detailed, and if we can just tap into the gold that's in
Mhm.
the middle, because we got to go through that dark part of ourselves, which are a lot of things we may not like about ourselves, which are
Right.
usually the things people see in other people that they don't like about their own selves. But
Right.
they, even Christ said, um, take the plank out of your own eye before you take the speck out of your brother's eye, and so true, because people are real quick to point fingers and, hey, you did this, but they don't realize that they themselves have the same situation or maybe even worse.
Right.
Um,
And it's that, everyone's always looking for that gold outside of them, like around them, and it's in here. All you gotta do is turn inward. Like,
yep.
you know, gold's
And we
within.
have amazing guides, spirit guides, and our free will, our higher self, all these entities that make up who we are,
Right.
helping us on our journey. Like, we have so much help, it's ridiculous. If we
Because
would just wake up and
unless you know about it, you don't tap into it. You have no idea. You kind of like, oh, cool. I felt goosebumps and feels like something's around me, but
well,
you know,
right, even with all of this stuff, I mean, these are these are always things that I've been mostly aware of in my own life growing up, but I could feel them, but I didn't ever know there was a structure or that there should be a structure. So being able to put this together so that we can all have a conversation and discuss it and understand better like how we're
right,
made up and what we can do in our everyday lives to help us realize things and grow spiritually, as well as being able to impact everyone around us in a more positive manner. um, that's huge. So
right.
going on with that, we will go on to number three, which is awareness.
Okay,
Once we are aware of certain things, awareness generates ethics, which ethics and consideration are pretty closely tied. So when we're aware of certain things around, um, things that are happening around us, when we start putting things together, that awareness, the aha moments, help us to be able to have better ethics, have better consideration for ourselves, for other people around us. And then it's more of that, um, the Christ flow of, you know, ethically responding to what you know at that point. So it would be unethical to be aware of, you know, a drug deal next door or something. And you could, hold on, that's not a good example. Let's try this again. Um,
like
It would be unethical to tell a lie just because you were trying to help someone in a specific way, but it's not fair to everyone involved, most likely, because it wasn't founded on the truth to begin with. So even if it's slightly altered, um, it's but having that awareness, if you're aware of it and do it anyway, then you're being unethical. So if you're unaware
right.
of things, then you're just ignorant. Excuse me. So
I mean, plain and simple, down to the basics. Yeah.
I got a really big download last night as I was going to sleep, because I know that I've had the I call it the sound civilization in my ears, the ringing crystals ringing in my ears for over 3 years now, which started when my real putting everything together really popped.
Right.
And at first the ringing drove me a little nutty. I wasn't sure why it was happening or what's going on, but I've learned over time to that it is a sound civilization, and I was not sure what they've been trying to tell me. But last night, as I was going to sleep, I was asking them again. I was like, "Please, just translate this for me so I understand what you're saying,"
It's been 3
And
years. Translate
I
already.
know, like, I mean, I know it. They're bringing in lots of things that I may not be aware of at this very moment, but so I was falling asleep. I was like, "Don't." I just heard and felt feel. Like, don't hear it, feel it. And I was like, "Whoa." I mean, seems pretty basic, but feel the sound. Don't
So,
hear the sound. So
based
I
on
was
that,
like, "Okay." And then it hit me. It was just like all that information came in as I was feeling the sound. It was like the reason that the ringing is happening for so many, and it's also happening, I believe, with the Schumann, with all this energy coming in. The Schumann's giving us indication of what's going on. Is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Um, is that they're sending all these higher vibrations, sound waves to us to help elevate us to higher levels. The higher the awareness, the more we understand and the more we're able to put everything together. So I was like, huh. So anyway, I thought that was pretty awesome last night. That was my newest discovery. Um,
That's awesome. Well, and that's what I tell people, when I'm trying to teach them how to tap into their abilities and stuff like that, or even just to, like I say to people, and you know me, I just kind of jump in there and I'm like, hey, do it this way.
yeah.
And I try my best to explain from here to here sometimes. Anyway, but when I try to tell people, go in and look, they're like, how? I can't see anything. And I'm like, okay, close your eyes and feel what you're seeing. Feel what maybe you're hearing it. Hear what you're seeing. Like, I know it sounds weird, but use the other abilities that you have to see or to
Well, what's
feel
so
or to
cool
hear
is
or to taste or to smell, right?
yeah. Well, all of those are senses, and
Mhm.
spirit is the senses of. So
Exactly.
our spirit is, we choose our spirit for our soul. So
Right.
our spirit works great with the soul and free will to help guide us and steer us through life. And
I just got
um,
giggling.
but the spirit, yeah, those senses, like all of the senses of, we have our sense of taste, smell, touch, our gut feelings, all those are the spirit helping us out with many indications. So if we can tap into those feelings more, and those senses, well, the feelings of are another one, but the senses are our spirit specifically. So
Right.
sensing those things is super important.
Yeah, that was I
And I
totally
got a
agree.
lesson in it myself last night with
There
feel the
you
sound.
go.
And
There
I'm like,
you
I
go.
know this. Why haven't I figured?
Don't
So,
you don't you hate it when it's like 3 years later and you finally get that aha moment and you're like, "The hell were you before? Like, why'd you
yeah.
what?" You know? Oh
Well,
my goodness.
sometimes we weren't ready for all that information
No,
before.
no.
We think we
And
would
it's
have been, but
sometimes it's the simplest information and it's just like, "Really? I wasn't ready for that?" Like, what? Oh goodness.
absolutely. So, number four of the soul is generosity uh, generates altruism. So,
Okay.
and I don't think a lot of I think a lot of people know, but I think it's confusing the word altruism as a whole because it's not used
So what
probably.
is that
It is
exactly?
the unselfish regard for yourself. It's unselfish regard for others and being able to help them in any way. So service to others, basically, without any respect,
Yeah.
without any expectations or expecting anything in return. It's all, you're being generous with
Unconditional.
your time, you're being generous with money, you're being generous with
Mhm.
whatever your action is. You're doing it with a full giving heart with no expectations of, return of payment or something like that. It's truly for the best of the other person.
So unconditional, no conditions, right?
Yeah.
Technically, kind of, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, but being
I mean,
generous with our gifts and things that we have, uh, you know, it gives us the altruism and we offer. It activates or generates. Sorry, let me go back. Generosity generates altruism. So when we are generous with people, that altruistic feeling is coming back of like, oh, you know how you feel good after you've really helped somebody and you don't expect anything in return. Just the gratitude of that person is beyond enough.
and I don't. A lot of times, I don't even really expect the gratitude. It's just, I did it, and the fact that I knew that I could help in some way is good enough,
Well, yeah,
right?
just knowing that you've done it. it's
Yeah.
nice to get the gratitude, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot of times you don't get that either. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah, I'll
well,
see you later. All right,
yeah.
bye.
But
See you again in 2 weeks when I mess it up again. All right, bye. No problem. You know my boundaries are going up next week, right?
let's see. So number 5 is this is going to be an interesting one because everybody talks about consciousness, and I think most people there's a lot of words that um, have double meanings or they've been used in other ways, so they like change their meaning over time. Um, and I feel like consciousness is one of those words where people really mean awareness. Um, but true consciousness generates life. So,
Right.
spirit is a life bringer. So spirit is bringing a life into our body. It's like an, nuclear reactor fires up all the cylinders, but then spirit also works as our guide with the senses. So, but the uh, spirit is the life generator. So when we talk about consciousness, it is the life force of a being that has a soul.
Right.
So to me, like consciousness that people talk about as far as like an all knowing is more of that broader awareness or higher awareness as people get um have more awareness, they're able to have more ethics and more consideration for certain things because they understand things better and how they work. So anyway, short story, long story short, or made it a shorter story. And we would love any questions that you guys have too. If anybody has any
Yes,
questions
of
about
course.
any of this along the way, we will have a question and answer session after this at a later date. So let us know if you are confused about anything or have any additional questions, and we'll be glad to address
And
those
on the playback
questions.
video, we can put the an email address or addresses to send any questions that you may have to either one of us. Technically, there. Okay, so the way that this is working is she's actually they are actually teaching me. It's kind of like a live thing, right? So you guys are learning with um and I mean there might be some debates. I don't know what this is going to turn into, but
Yeah, we're
we're
kind of
definitely
winging it, but
yeah, for
we
sure.
feel called to work together to get this information out.
Hmm.
Um, all of us do. So understand, and that's the thing is understanding everything as much as possible just allows us for more growth going forward.
Right.
And everybody talks about things that we should do for soul growth, but nobody has real life application. And so that's where we all feel this is important. Is this is something that we can work on daily in every situation, all these aspects of our souls. And the more we understand how our souls are put together, we can
Hmm.
understand how they work together in different situations that we're in. Um, you know, it's really cool to see how it's all come together and you get less frazzled or upset about certain things because you already know what you're dealing with before it starts usually. So
Right. And see, I met Leanne 3 years ago. We had we when I tell everybody that people leave your path and then they come back sometimes. Like her and I had like split for about what, a year and a half, something like that. And I kept getting these signals like things that were like reminding me of her, and I was like, what's going on here? And I've been trying to figure out who I'm supposed to be doing this podcast with because I knew I was supposed to be doing a podcast. And I talked to her and she's like, yeah, she's like, and I was like, let's do it. And then Mercury retrograde in Taurus hit this year, and I mean, I'm probably one of the very few on the planet that was like, 2 more weeks, please. And everyone else was like, screw you. We want it to end, right? So, because everything about this podcast was just falling into place, and it was time. It's time to get the information out.
feels
And
like
it's
more
crazy.
people are ready for it now than they were a
Well,
couple
yeah,
years
and
ago.
there's more, there's actually things that we're going to be talking about, they're gonna be teaching me and that we're gonna be, talking back and forth about. Um, some of this stuff I've seen like bits and pieces of little remnants of what I've already heard of their information being talked about like on TikToks and stuff like that. And so I'm like, they're ready. Like they're totally ready for us. So we're just gonna ambush them and we're gonna get it out there. We're gonna do it in a fun way. We're not going to be, gotta get this done, even though I
And
feel like
a
I feel like we're on
disclaimer,
a timeline.
yeah, no, but and a disclaimer on all this too. Like, this is not stuff. Most of the stuff is not something you can Google and get similar answers. Like, these are things
Mm-mm.
that Ion and I have had. Mostly, Ion has been able to put together with his angelic team. They've given him amazing information. He's had conversations with the light civilization. I hear the sound civilization. He's met the sound civilization, which is really cool.
Right. That's
Um,
so cool.
but I mean, there's and the free will civilization. I mean, like what they look like and how they are with each other, and everyone
Mhm.
bows to the free will civilization. The light builder civilization. They're constantly repairing. Well, sound civilization is constantly repairing the universal fabric to make sure our universe stays together. And the light civilization, they build stars, suns. Like they build suns. Earth was supposed to be a sun. There's so much information we won't go into today, but it's really cool.
I was like,
So
no, it's gonna
these are
be
these
me.
are things that have come to us in various forms through the divine. So you know, it is the way if we feel it as absolute truth because it feels sense on all levels, and we have actually been living these things, um, and want to help other
For the
people be
last
able
couple
to
of
do
years.
that same thing so that everyone else can feel as free as we feel, because it is very free, to be able to know
Right.
you're in control of certain elements, but you know how to react when you are in elements that you're not able to control. So
And you guys will get used to the whole feel sense thing. It's gonna take a minute. She's been saying this stuff to me for 3 years, and I'm like, I'm getting there. I'm still getting there. I'm still getting there.
it's
But I'm
okay.
finding myself saying it more and more. Like, I'll get there. I mean, I know it's right, but you get the habit of saying makes and makes sense, and so
Right.
it's so ingrained in your vocabulary, and just in how you innately, or not even innately, but how you just robotically respond, that you're like, "Oh, whoops, I mean feels." I catch myself
Yeah,
all the
all
time.
of our language has been so tweaked. I mean, everything's been tweaked.
Mhm.
We can step out and look at the bigger view of everything. I mean, our language, I remember even thinking when I was, when bad came out and it meant opposite, like, "Oh, you're so bad," meaning good. When I was a
I don't
teenager,
understand the
like
children. I don't
I
understand
it
the children
was
nowadays.
yeah, I never got that. I was like, or my bad, like, well, you I don't know, just certain words that people have tweaked and used in different ways. I feel like it
And
was
twerked.
suggested for spelling reasons, and everything that we think and say and do has a ripple effect. So we
Mhm.
have to be careful with everything that we do because
It's
we
all
are a lot
vibration.
more powerful than we have been led to believe. Let me tell you for
Right.
that right now.
Exactly.
Do we have time to go through how many more do we have? Three more, or
Of
do you wanna
course.
save those for another? Okay.
It's up to you if you wanna
So
go for it, go for it. I'm
okay.
ready.
Number 6 is humbleness generates humility. Whereas that's pretty self-explanatory. But the more humbleness that we have in, situations, not to be walked over, we've gotta have some boundaries, but having enough humbleness to where we don't look like our ego is driving us all over the place, you know?
Some of those
So
ego things.
that one's pretty self-explanatory, but the last 2 are the only elements that make a human. Forgiveness generates, oh my gosh, my brain just went blank. Forgiveness generates sympathy. I have these memorized, believe it or not, but forgiveness generates sympathy. Forgiveness is like if you forgive, you're giving for another person. So you're understanding their situation. Sympathy is the understanding of. So for activating sympathy with forgiveness, it just simply means that we really understand the other person and we're able to relate to them on a certain level. Um, Compassion, the last one, compassion generates empathy. Um, and that is empathy is the feeling of other people. So the literal feeling of joy or the literal feeling of whatever pain they're going through. That's that empath where they feel that deep feeling um, and be able to understand. So having compassion actually activates that feeling, the empathic part of the human soul. So some people people can have a soul and have forgiveness, but they don't have compassion. So, like a serial killer, he might be able to understand, but he wouldn't have any compassion. Otherwise, I don't think he would be doing what he was doing, right?
Right.
So, um, but those are the first eight elements that make up our souls. There's souls in everything. There's souls in plants, souls in animals, souls in
Right.
uh, everywhere. But what makes up a human are those last two, forgiveness and or compassion. As long as they have one or the other, um, makes a human. So,
Right.
but those are all divinely given. So if we weren't divinely given compassion, I don't know why, but uh,
Yeah. With the
again, it
forgiveness.
probably goes back to those decisions. That decision, that ultimate decision of what are we going to do? Are we going to work on ourselves for the betterment of everyone, for ourselves and everyone around us, or are we going to just be, cheaters and liars and try to get away with whatever? So,
Right. Well,
um,
and it's that forgiveness. It is for the other person, but it's more for you. Just you, quit carrying around that weight that somebody else placed upon you that was never meant. You were never meant to accept that for yourself to carry around that weight, right? And that's what I
right.
try to explain to people when I do all the oracle readings and sun tarot readings and stuff like that. I'm like, you know, first forgive for you, forget the other person for now. Forgive for you. And, if you're looking for that forgiveness from another person, if they're a narcissist, good luck. you know,
You
good
might
luck.
never get it.
If they don't believe that they've ever done anything wrong in their lives, they're perfect, right? And I don't wish
That
anything, but
is
that perfection.
narcissism is a prime example of an overinflated ego. The ego will kill you
Mhm.
just to be right.
But yet,
And I
but
think
yet
it's
it'll keep you
pretty
alive. It'll
pretty
keep you
rampant
alive
right now.
right, and it'll keep you alive at the same time
Well,
because
the ego
it
was
knows that
created to help us with survival, but it's so if there's no balance there, it will overtake and it will kill you just to be right. But I
right,
mean,
and that's what I
the
don't
other
get, like.
major reason for having an ego is for mating purposes and social interactions. So, you know, you got to men have to have a little bit of ego to go after the woman, so there's got to be a little play there, but um, as long as we are on an individual level aware of ourselves on all these levels, it's a lot easier to balance everything and make sure that we are flowing in a way that would be pleasing to the rest of the universe and everyone around us.
Right. Well,
It's
and
part
like
of
I
the
said,
ascension.
with the ego, it's like the ego will just to be right. You're right. It will possibly kill you, but at the same time, the ego knows that its time is limited and it only has control over this body. So it. What is the word I'm looking for? It's
Self-preservation.
no. It's. Oh, the word is right on the edge of my tongue, like right on the tip of my tongue. It's. I mean, it's moronic.
Narcissistic.
No, not narcissistic.
It
Oh, what
can
is
be.
it's like God, I can't think of the word. And you know what? I'm gonna people who watch this are gonna be like, it's this, and yeah, you're right. And but I can't think of the word right now. It's
It's okay. Maybe it wasn't supposed to come out.
an oxymoron. Like
Oh yeah.
it's an oxymoron. I knew it was something. It's an
Well,
oxymoron.
the ego
But
was created. It's just a little portion in the mind. So like the mind created the ego to help it out, but it kind of took
it
over and ran
overpowers
away with a
you.
lot of people. So we say compassion and naturally produced. I'm going to say this naturally produced, not taken outside of your body, but DMT naturally produced within yourself. And
Okay.
that and compassion are the antidote to this ego virus that's all over the place right now.
Okay.
We'll get more into the ego later. It is the
All right.
seventh body of our whole bodies. So
Okay.
the soul is the first one, but we'll go into more detail on those and break them down a lot more. And of course, there'll be more questions, I'm sure, for that. But
Awesome.
anything else you want to add, Christina?
No. It's a lot
No?
of information. Let's just
Okay.
let's I think that's an even stop, right? So
Yeah, I think this wraps up the first layer of the soul. So our next one, we'll look at the second layer. And in the meantime, if anyone has any questions, we can have another episode in between to answer those and go from there.
and her other part will be joining us for the Q&A
Yes,
sessions
Ion will
too.
join us for the
So
question and answer sessions just because we're scheduling and he's great at those things. So we will refer to him for all the questions and we'll all just have a conversation with it and it'll be a great learning experience. Plus his accent's
awesome.
great too.
I'm excited. Can't wait.
Me too. He is
All
too.
right.
All right. Thanks guys.
See you
Thank you,
later.
Christina.
No,